Hello everyone, my name is Katie and today we're exploring the pits of hell, aka metal subreddit. So today I'm going to be looking at heavy metal hot takes, and I found one that was on r/metal for the masses, so it's going to have a variety of hot takes and unpopular opinions from all different subgenres of metal. So I feel like this might start an argument today, but I love chaos, so let's make it happen. Slow riffage is better than fast riffage. You know, I somewhat agree with this. It's really weird because one of my favorite subgenres is thrash metal and I really like the fast stuff, but I'm kind of this way too. I'm definitely a doom metal enjoyer, not just because of the actual sound of that specific genre, but I do just like the slower stuff. Sometimes I feel like slower is heavier. You can feel it more on your chest. Think about in like an orchestra setting, a lot of times when they want to make something feel heavier or more powerful, they'll slow it down. The same goes for metal, and I kind of feel this way too, but not all the time. I like all the different flavors, and I wouldn't say that I always want my music to be slow. I like to have the fast stuff too, but sometimes I do think it's better just because it feels a little heavier most of the time. It can get a little bit boring and repetitive though. I like solos. I like breakdowns, but when a band does them constantly, it doesn't feel as cool anymore. I totally agree with this. I get so burnt out when they do the same old thing. Like, this is really a problem for me in a lot of modern deathcore bands. They overuse the breakdown so much. I'm gonna call it like the Lorna Shore effect. Whenever everyone started trying to copy the To the Hellfire breakdown, I feel like every band started doing that and it got so repetitive. And when you have too much of any good thing, it becomes a bad thing. Like, you can't overdo it. We know that you're able to create something this badass, but that doesn't mean you have to do it in every single song, or it's just not as special anymore. Same thing with guitar solos. There's so many like extremely talented guitarists that they want to show their absolute best work on every track. Same thing can be said for vocalists. A lot of times these vocalists that are extremely talented, once again in deathcore, the whole like vocal gymnastics thing, they always want to show how talented they are, but it becomes a thing where if you're always using your best version of your voice, it doesn't feel special. Like, there needs to be moments where you're toning it down a little bit. That way when you do go all the way, it means more. They said, like, if I can put on an album and out of nowhere it has a great guitar solo that really helps make the song amazing, great. Some songs really are better with their solo, but if I'm expecting it in every song, then it's just a long part of the song. Thank you. Yes, I feel like if you're making like a full, let's say like 10 song album, not every single song needs to have a guitar solo or a breakdown or just any big moment. It doesn't need to be on every single song. One thing I hate the most is when I can predict exactly what's going to happen in a song, like the bands that tend to follow the same song composition and pattern in every single track. So you hear one of their songs and you've pretty much heard them all. I can't stand that. Modern day Metallica is really bad for this. Kirk Hammett is just constantly doing the same licks and the same solos in every song, and you know exactly when it's going to happen, how long it's going to last, what it's gonna sound like it's way too predictable. Anyways, moving on. That one got me worked up. If my dad listens to it, I am referring to it as dad rock, no matter what the actual genre is. This is so funny. Like, one time I blew up on TikTok because I called Slipknot dad rock, but at this point in time, it kind of is dad rock because it's always ever changing, right? Like, people that listen to new metal right now, they're all dads now and parents now. Like, they're part of that generation now that has their own children and stuff. So it's like dad rock has shifted. It was like a lot of the old school like glam and hair metal stuff, and then these days it's the stuff from the late 90s, early 2000s. That's kind of what I call dad rock now. It's like an umbrella that keeps getting new things adding to it as time goes on, and I'm the same way. Like, if dads are listening to it and it's very popular amongst an older generation, it's considered dad rock. Guys, I don't think Pantera is a bad band because they have a couple douchebags. One of the most legendary guitarists and drummers. Yes, the Abbott brothers, absolutely amazing. May they both rest in peace. Now, Pantera was one of my favorite bands for many years. In my teenage years, they changed everything for me. I was a hardcore fangirl of this band, and I still really love their music. Now that I'm older, it feels really hard to be a full-on Pantera fan just because I don't like a lot of the things that the members have said. I don't like Phil Anselmo whatsoever as a person. He's an incredible vocalist, don't get me wrong, but I get this. Like, Pantera musically as a band is still really good. Like, don't even have bad albums unless you want to talk about the power metal stuff, but I kind of just don't count those. But I genuinely do think they're a really good band, and it's hard for me to ever say I don't want to listen to them ever again, like especially with a guitarist like Dimebag Darrell. He had something no one else has ever been able to truly replicate that man played the guitar from his soul. His guitar solos, especially think of songs like Floods, it sounds like the guitar is singing. It has its own voice. Like, that is so hard to do. As someone that's learning the guitar, I know it's so hard to have your own tone and your own style that other people can't necessarily replicate and sound just like you. He had something special that I feel like no one has ever been able to do. I don't think they're a bad band because they have a couple douchebags either. I do, however, think they're a bad band because they suck. If you like black metal, but you don't like that raw stuff with bad production, you don't really like black metal. I agree with this person. And for a long time, I kind of was this person who said things like this. I would be like, well, there's a few black metal bands that I like that are more atmospheric, they have better production quality. But at the end of the day, that's not really even what black metal is or how it was founded and what it's really supposed to be. So I kind of agree with this person. Even though I have been one of the people that said things like this, I think this person is correct, and maybe I just wasn't a fan of black metal when I said those sorts of things. Carrie King is overrated. Actually, I'm gonna pretend I'm shocked by this, but no, I had the same sort of realization recently. Obviously Jeff Hanneman is the real reason that Slayer's guitar work was so incredible. All of their most iconic guitar riffs were written by Jeff Hanneman, and you know, Carrie King is kind of a sloppy guitarist in general. He definitely messes up a lot. If you watch their live performances and kind of like look at his fingers and what he's actually doing, a lot of times he's not even playing the notes correctly. And I mean, you hear it a lot on the Slayer albums, like he does mess up a lot and it kind of like sounds cooler that way. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but overall, he's definitely not like the greatest guitarist. But at the end of the day, if you can play any Slayer music, you're an incredible guitarist. It's so fast, thrashy, like it's so hard for me to learn. I have a newfound respect for Carrie King after trying to learn Slayer stuff on guitar, because no matter how sloppy you are or if you wrote it or not, you have to be pretty talented to have the stamina and speed that he has. So while he's a little bit overrated, I feel like he does get too much of the attention from fans. I feel like when you picture Slayer, I picture Carrie King. I don't know what it is about his look that makes him so memorable. It's just like the bald head and the glasses and his cool like horned neck guitar. I don't know. I always think of him when I think of Slayer, but he might be a little overrated. I still respect the hell out of him though. People who complain about gatekeepers and elitists are more annoying and vocal than actual gatekeepers and elitists. I agree with this actually. I feel like the tables have turned a little bit to the point where people will go on TikTok and whine about gatekeepers more than I see people actually trying to gatekeep and not allow people into the culture or the scene, whatever you want to call it. I do feel like some sort of like victim mentality complex has been created on the internet when it comes to this topic, because while there are people who are gatekeepers and elitists, I feel like some people take it a little bit too seriously. Like if they like a really popular band like Sleep Token or something like that, and they get people in their comments on the internet saying like, I don't like this band sucks. They think that that like actually means something and that people are trying to kick them out of the community or something. But at the end of the day, the communities are so separated and different that I feel like no one's trying to not include you in something. I think they just really have a distaste for those bands and have to express it, which is also cringe. I'm like, if you don't like something, just move on and let people be happy. So I fall on both sides of it. I talked about this in my last video. It's like the poser versus gatekeeper thing. It's all really just a stupid conversation. I will say, someone not liking your favorite band does not make them a gatekeeper. And also, someone liking a band that you don't like doesn't make that person a poser either. I like groovy death metal that isn't just trim picking. Yes, I'm the same way. I like a lot of the old school Florida death metal bands because I feel like they have a little bit more of that groove, especially bands like Obituary, and Morbid Angel even has some of that stuff too. I prefer that when they do slow it down a little bit and have these little breakdown moments throughout all of the fast, super speedy stuff. I don't like deathcore, but early bands like Sewer Slide Silence are great. I kind of agree with this. I'm not really a hardcore deathcore fan either. My name is Katie Core on here. People get that so confused. The core isn't meant to be related to metalcore, deathcore, hardcore, any of that stuff. But yeah, I'm not really a deathcore fan all that much, especially the modern bands. I talked about this before. I feel like they all have this copy and taste template of who can have the best vocals and the best breakdowns, and it just gets really repetitive. The bands are extremely talented, but I feel like their talents go to waste a little bit by making the same song every single time. However, I do agree, I like some of the earlier stuff, like Sewer Slide Silence was one of my favorite bands way back in the day, and I liked Whitechapel back then, and some of the early stuff was cool. I feel like it was a little bit more creative then. I do think Slaughter to Prevail is really cool. I kind of feel the same way about those members as I feel about the Pantera members. So don't really like Alex Terrible all that much, but musically, really cool stuff. It's like groovy deathcore. I think I just like groove metal. Black metal attracts the most posers. Why do I kind of agree with this? Here's the thing, okay? A lot of people that become black metal elitists do it for the wrong reasons. They don't even care about the music. For them, it's just like this image they want to have. They want to be edgelords. They want people to think they're special. They want to be contrarian. It's like a I'm not like the other girls situation. That's how I see some black metal listeners. Not all of them. Mostly just the ones on the internet. The ones that think that anything that isn't black metal, anyone that listens to anything outside of that genre is a poser and oh, fuck the mainstream. Like, that stuff is just like, I find that extremely cringe. The ones that care a lot about their appearance, like it's all about what you're wearing and the corpse paint and all of that stuff. I feel like in a way, you're the one posing. You're trying to keep this image and you want people to see you a certain way. Like, that literally is posing, in my opinion. So this doesn't mean that everyone that listens to black metal is like this. I think some people genuinely just like the music and all of that, and it's not a big deal. But I will say it does attract a lot of that stuff on the internet, and I think it might just be like edgelord teenagers, probably. I don't think it's like really an actual problem, but I do find it funny. Oh my gosh, I just recently said this on Twitter and everyone freaked out, okay? Death's version of Painkiller is better than Judas Priest's Painkiller. I agree. Oh my gosh, I think it is probably the best cover of a metal song of all time, and it's one of the examples where the cover band does it better than the original. That opening scream from Chuck is just, ugh, I don't know, something about Death's tone and their musical style fits Painkiller better. Like, don't get me wrong, the original is amazing. One of the best drum intros ever. Rob Halford's vocals are out of this world, but something about Chuck and Death just does it for me. This person has another take. Let's see if I agree with them twice. It says Type O Negative Black Sabbath is better than Black Sabbath's Black Sabbath. I don't know if I agree with that. I am a Type O Negative fan. I know that's controversial. Some people just really hate that band, but I cannot agree with you here. People fetishize older albums too much. There's a lot of great metal releases after the year 2000 or even 2010. I think that my top 5 are mostly fairly recent albums. I agree with this a little bit. I do get tired of the whole they don't make them like they used to thing, because there's definitely bands that are still making music like we used to. I think humans just have a habit of liking things that came first. Whoever did it first, people consider it the best, which isn't even true. Like, usually whenever something is created, over time more people get inspired by that thing and they're able to make like better versions of it, and it evolves into something bigger and better. So old definitely doesn't mean best. The And Justice for All snare is worse than the Saint Anger snare. Ooh, okay, well, first of all, I'm just gonna say this is my hot take. I don't even think the Saint Anger snare is bad. I don't know what it is. I like that dodgeball snare that we call it. It's in slam metal a lot. I personally think it sounds really cool. I think it's very fitting for the album and the aggressive style they were going for. However, I don't think that the And Justice for All snare is worse than Saint Anger snare. Not at all. I do think that the mixing on Justice is a little bit weird. Of course, we have the problem with the lack of bass. We don't have to talk about that. Keep in mind, this is my favorite metal album ever, like of all time, but I can still criticize that the production quality was weird. And I know what they mean about the drums. Like, the snare does have this weird hard hittingness, especially with headphones on. Like, it definitely could have been mixed better, but I wouldn't say that it's worse, like in terms of that harshness that we're talking about. Saint Anger's is definitely worse. All of Lamb of God is good, but if you told me all of it was the same song, I wouldn't say you're wrong. This is so true. Like, they're a great band and they're fun, but God, every song sounds the same, and there's not really anything stand out in their catalog. Like, it's weird that they were one of my favorite bands at one point. I feel like anyone who's a Pantera fan sort of becomes a Lamb of God fan by association, but this is so accurate. Mayhem is just for edgy teenagers to brag about how crazy the music they listen to is. No one would give a shit about them if it wasn't for the murders and church burnings. I kind of agree with this. Like, I am intrigued by Mayhem and their story. I actually like the Death Crush EP, which is crazy. Like, I don't think their music is all that good, but that EP is definitely their best work. But I kind of agree with this. It's another thing. It's just like an edgelord teenage thing on the internet this happens with. people will be like, oh, I love black metal, and like Mayhem is the only band they listen to. Yeah, whatever. We could talk about this forever. I don't think it's bad to like that band, but it definitely does attract some people that listen to it just because of the crazy backstory. But it's interesting. What can I say? Altars of Madness is overrated. I don't necessarily think that. I do think Morbid Angel has some albums that are maybe better. I really like Domination, but I wouldn't say that it's overrated. I feel like it's perfectly rated. Five Finger Death Punch's first 3 albums are solid groove metal albums with some actual bangers, even outside of a gym or a gun range setting. This is true. This is actually very true. I feel like their early stuff is really good. It's another one that by association, if you like Pantera, you're gonna fall into Five Finger Death Punch. At least that was the case for me when I was 14. So I don't know, like their early stuff is good. I feel like they got a little bit senile and boomerish after like 2014, 2015. I stopped really liking them. But God, those early albums do hit hard, and like sometimes it's hard to go back and listen to it and separate myself from everything that I know about Ivan Moody and I don't know, like it's kind of cringe, but the early stuff is actually pretty solid music. The scene hates anyone who's an outsider, despite this scene being created by outsiders. Yes, thank you. I always say this. I'm like, the point where gatekeeping and elitism becomes toxic is when you're literally outcasting the outcasts. Like the whole point of it all is that it's meant to be a place like metal. The whole scene is meant to be a place for outcasts and for underdogs to come together and share their love for music and put a middle finger up to the world. And I do notice a lot that people want to like turn against each other if they're not the same kind of outcasts as one another. They're like, you're not like me, so you don't belong here. But no, I feel like it's supposed to be a place for everyone to feel included. Being a fan of death metal is like choosing a football team. I don't know what that means. Covenant is better than Altars of Madness. I agree with this one. That's one of the albums I was thinking about when we were talking about it. Still don't think Altars is overrated though. Megadeth is the best in the big 4. In terms of thrash, maybe. Anthrax is the most consistent for just specific thrash. Like Megadeth definitely trails off and does other things. I don't like this whole thing where people say that Megadeth stuck with being thrash and Metallica didn't. It's always like a competition. Megadeth went off and made really weird albums too that weren't thrash whatsoever, so I don't know where that comes from. If you're talking about thrash big 4, Metallica is like objectively the best, but that's really hard. I think Metallica is just musically the best, but Anthrax is the most consistent if you're talking about just specifically thrash music. Scream Bloody Gore is Death's best album. No, my favorite one is The Sound of Perseverance, but I don't really think Scream, it's up there. I feel like Symbolic is one of their best though. I would put that above Scream Bloody Gore. Can't say that. Judas Priest and Iron Maiden are mid. Black Sabbath clears both. I kind of agree with this. As much as I do like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, I always feel like they were a little bit overrated. Now let's backtrack this a little bit. They're very important and influential, and I understand why they're so iconic, and I do really like them. But there's so many things that absolutely just clear them at this point in time. This goes back to one of the things that I said about old doesn't mean best. Other people will take inspiration and make what you did better, and we're constantly evolving. Kind of feel that way looking back at these sorts of bands. You could even say this about some of Black Sabbath stuff, but definitely out of all the like traditional heavy metal bands, Black Sabbath is light years more important to me. Mayhem's first 2 albums clear most black metal albums. No, I feel like Dark Throne, Immortal, Emperor, all of their albums are way better than anything Mayhem ever created. Ronnie James Dio's work in Rainbow is better than his work in Black Sabbath or his band Dio. Better than Dio? I don't know. I feel like I like his work in Dio better than Black Sabbath. I really do like Rainbow, but I think Dio's probably my favorite of all of his work. Black metal is far from being a top 3 or even top 5 metal genre. You know, I kind of agree, just because musically I feel like it's lacking a lot. It's not meant to do the same thing that most music is, and I don't know, I just feel like it's not comparable to a lot of the other stuff. It's definitely like lower mid-tier for me when it comes to all the genres put together. There's a lot of things I like a lot more. I feel like my top list would be traditional heavy metal, thrash metal, old school death metal specifically, doom metal. Like there's so many things that would go before black. I'm not a huge fan of the Florida death metal scene. Most death metal bands I like come from other places. I don't know what it is about this, but I am a sucker for Florida death metal. I like it better than the New York stuff, more than the Swedish stuff. I don't know what it is. It's something about Florida that I like Florida Man, okay? Florida Man memes turned into music, like that's how I envision it. Like they're crackheads. They're on another level. I don't know what it is. Can't stand the sound of Perseverance. Ouch. Chuck's vocals are fucking awful. I would generally rather listen to Dave Mustaine. Better riffs too. Well, this is the thing. I love Dave Mustaine and I don't even hate his voice. So that's one thing. Most people hate Dave's voice, but absolutely not. I love the high pitch that Chuck does on this album. Something about it, like he kind of sounds like a female. Maybe it's like a feminine thing, I don't know, but I just freaking love it. Fernanda Lira from Nervosa and Crypta, she kind of replicates that so well. But anyways, like I love this album. I feel so raw and emotional. Like if you know me, you know this is one of my favorite albums of all time. So I cannot agree with you. Black metal bad, haha, whatever. Not even remotely that hot, but Kill 'Em All is better than all other Metallica albums. Nah, I wouldn't say that. It's a really great start, and it's like one of the most iconic thrash albums, probably the first thrash album ever. But no, they definitely got way better throughout their discography. Like a masterpiece, like Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning, and Justice for All. Like, come on. You cannot sit there and say Kill 'Em All is objectively better than that. Like musically, not even metal-wise, just music as a whole. Like, come on. Deftones is better than every other new metal band combined. I don't even think Deftones is bad. It's just something I've never been interested in. I like Saint Anger. You know, I kind of do too. Like, it's one of those things when you're in a certain mood, I guess you could say angry, it's a good album to listen to. I don't hate it. Some of the songs I don't really like as much, and I understand why people don't like it. Like, if a band other than Metallica made it, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. My least favorite part of the whole thing is James's vocals on it. I just feel like they don't match the music whatsoever, but I kind of do like the raw aggressive sound. Like I said, I like the snare, so I kind of like it too. This person said, I like Risk and Super Collider. Risk, Megadeth's Risk, absolutely terrible album. One of the only albums I would ever give a 0 out of 10. Absolutely hate that album. Super Collider is right there with it too. Like that one just should have never been made. I don't understand the vision there. I feel nothing from that one. Code Red and M16 are better than Agent Orange. That is so true. I feel like Sodom's most iconic album is Agent Orange, but I feel like I listen to M16 more often. Slipknot is mid even before Volume 3. I kind of feel this way as time goes on. Like they were one of my favorites for many, many years. I still really like them, but I can totally understand why you would say this. Like at some point, I feel like after All Hope Is Gone, they kind of became redundant, and I could live without the albums past that one. Five Finger Death Punch isn't that bad, at least with the first two albums. Agree. Slayer has an almost perfect discography. No, I mean, you could say that none of it's actually terrible, but so many of it past the first like 5 albums could have never have been made, and I don't think anything would have changed in the world. It's just super repetitive. Okay, so that's all for my metal hot takes for now. Let me know in the comments down below what you agree with and disagree with. Like, have a full-on conversation and debate and argument in my comments. I would love that. I live for the chaos. I think it's funny, and keep it lighthearted. Don't be too mean to each other. I just like to hear all the differing opinions, the hot takes, the unpopular opinions, the cold takes even. I don't know. It's all just supposed to be in good fun, so keep that in mind. But I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!